So hey guys, Sex, Pies and Idiot Scrapes is episode 1 of season 20 of The Simpsons. It was directed by Lance Kramer and it was written by Kevin Curran. It also guest stars Robert Forster as Lucky Jim. The episode follows Homer being a bounty hunter, but when he realises he can't do it alone, he solicits the help of Ned Flanders. There is also a B-plot of Marge making erotic cakes. The episode is very wacky and really stands out to me as it has more mature humour, so let's look at the plot of this thing and answer if it's good or bad. So the A-plot and the B-plot are pretty intertwined, so I'm going to try my best to separate them, but they do overlap slightly. Starting off with the A-plot, the episode begins with a St. Patrick's Day parade in Springfield, the first alcohol-free one to be exact. The parade goes on, everyone seems to be having fun, and then the Northern Irish show up, and a fight is about to erupt. Lisa tries to calm the two crowds down, and at first, it works, and they begin to come together. But it doesn't last long, and a fight breaks out. Homer engages in the fight and is arrested. This is our inciting incident and begins the conflict to come. Homer is taken to court, and because he is a repeat offender, Judge Schneider sets his bail at a price Homer cannot pay. So Homer has to go to a bail bondsman and agrees to pay back the bail that they have lended to him with interest, and obviously also agrees to turn up in court. Also, Homer was fired from his job. Homer meets with Wolf, an obvious parody of Dog the Bounty Hunter, and Wolf recruits him as a bounty hunter. Homer tricks Snake with some new condos and rushes to corner him, but Snake pulls out a gun. Homer doesn't do a great job at talking him down, and Snake shoots Homer, but Flanders comes in with some bulletproof glass that he bought after his store window was broken by the riot. Now one could argue that this is quite convenient, but I would argue that they actually explain it pretty well by tying it back to the St. Patrick's Day riot scene. This also acts as our plot point too, as it begins the conflict of the episode. Flanders gives Snake a talking to, and Homer takes him in. Homer meets with Flanders and gives him half of the bail money, then Homer begs him to be a bounty hunter with him. This is the only thing where I honestly could maybe understand someone saying it doesn't fit into Homer's character. However, Homer was inches away from death, and that's really got to change his perspective on things, so I give it a pass. Flanders agrees to do this, as his store doesn't rake in much money, but he makes Homer promise to do things by the book. This is a really important pinch point of the plot, as it sets up the conflict that will occur later in the episode. After getting their own office, Homer and Flanders wait to get their first bail jumper, whilst Homer messes around with the taser. Soon they get their first jumper, it being Sideshow Bob. This is our midpoint or no turning back point. Now we don't actually see them go for Sideshow Bob, but instead we have this nice little montage scene of the two catching different bail jumpers. They back away from one, try and trick Clay, but Homer fails, and they call back nicely to Homer overusing the taser when they go after Dredrick Tatum. This little detail right here I really appreciate. The whole episode feels really consistent and it flows very nicely, right down to that taser gag with Homer. Homer treats his kids to things that he has taken from bail jumpers' properties, and he gives Lisa a meth lab. Oh jeez. Homer is hilarious in this. Homer and Marge connect, giving each other gifts and talk about their new professions. Homer and Flanders bond whilst waiting for Fat Tony, and I love this scene overall. I will go over it more in my character section, but this right here really makes the climax scene pack a punch when it comes later on. Soon, Fat Tony exits, and the two run to chase him in the car. Tony makes his way to the monorail/subway. I don't know if this is meant to be the monorail, I'm unsure. Anywho, Homer drives his car into the monorail/subway and suffocates Fat Tony for good measure. This enrages Flanders, as Homer previously promised him to do things by the book. They have an argument and both declare that their partnership is over. This is our plot point 2, low point. Both Homer and Flanders' newly formed relationship comes crashing down, and we see them bicker on the car journey back. Homer talks to Marge, who then reveals she has been cooking erotic cakes. Homer is uncool with it at first, but eventually he is convinced it's okay. Flanders visits Lucky Jim to tell him he quits, but Lucky Jim reveals that Homer never turned up in court and must be brought in. Flanders refuses at first, but after seeing the other options of people to take Homer in, he agrees to do it himself. I love this plot turn so much. They didn't throw it out of nowhere. They clearly told the audience that Homer needed to turn up to court. They could have maybe had a scene where Homer acknowledges that he is skipping his court, but I think that would have really ruined this reveal, and the way they did it right here is honestly perfect. Flanders waits for Homer at his house and tells him that he has to bring him in. Homer, however, flees. This epic chase scene begins. Now, on a story standpoint, I have nothing much to say about this chase scene, but on a technical standpoint, this chase scene is an amazing spectacle. The use of different camera angles, the way it flows from one location to the next, the humour mixed into it, it's just perfect. I don't mind that it wastes story time, as without it, the climax to come might have not been as well presented. Homer and Flanders each end up on this crane lifting up this metal thingy. Flanders and Homer argue about their relationship, and Flanders tells Homer to hand himself over, but Homer jumps to a lower crane metal thingy. This is our climax scene, by the way. Flanders attempts to jump on it but misses the jump and is dangling off. Homer sees his neighbour Reno hanging and is presented with flashbacks of them working together and working well, and goes to save him, but Homer didn't hang on to anything. The two land in wet cement, but they work out their differences in the end. Soon Wiggum shows up and arrests Homer and takes him to prison, but Homer is given a cake baked by Marge whilst he serves his short prison term. Nice resolution. Overall, this A-plot is perfect. Sometimes Homer and Flanders make the best stories. Having two enemies come together, or at least two people not on great terms, acts as a really nice way to stir up this weird buddy cop dynamic. They keep tying back to things previously established in the episode too. It doesn't feel like this story is going all over the place, it feels consistent and well paced. Honestly, I have nothing negative to say about this. I mean, I could be a real nitpicker and point out the unrealistic moves that Homer makes, but Flanders, I believe he can move like that. But for real, this A-plot is flawless to me. But sometimes, a good A-plot can be tainted by an unrelated and boring B-plot. Is that the case here? Let's see. The B-plot's inciting incident is literally in the exact same scene that the A-plot is, and that is of course Marge's cupcakes being saved by Patrick. In the exact same scene we see Homer being arrested. After trying Marge's cupcakes, Patrick asks her to become a baker, and Marge of course says yes. Marge bakes perfect cakes, but is concerned about the shapes she is baking. Patrick is about to tell her when Patty and Selma arrive, looking for a raunchy cake. Marge then figures out what is going on. This is our plot point 1. Patrick tries to explain it away, but Marge stays mad, but still can't think of a reason as to why they are wrong. Patrick persuades Marge not to pack in the baking, and reluctantly she agrees not to do so. This is our midpoint. We eventually then get our Marge and Homer scene, getting things for each other. We then get this scene with Selma, and I know it isn't technically a scene in the B-plot, rather a scene in the A-plot, but it ties in with the B-plot quite well, and acts as a really funny scene, especially when the cake goes flying into Skinner's house. We then get this scene with Marge and Homer in the kitchen, where Marge admits that she is baking erotic cakes. This acts as the low point for Marge, or the plot point 2, but it is quickly resolved. I'd argue that the climax scene is actually that final scene of the episode, where Marge gifts Homer that cake. It kind of shows that she isn't packing it in entirely, but at the same time, not fully embracing it. Overall, this B-plot is great. From a story standpoint, there isn't tons of conflict here, but the way it slices into the A-plot makes it up for that. That's why it makes it better than it would be on its own. The other thing about the B-plot is that it's hilarious. Like, super hilarious. Let's look at the jokes. Okay, so I think the humour in this episode is superb. There isn't a joke I rolled my eyes at or even thought was meh, unless I missed it. The humour is consistent too, right from the start with some really good St. Patrick's themed humour, all the way to the end with that nice bait and switch with the cake that Marge gives to Homer. The best jokes of the episode are by far the ones that come from Marge's B-plot. This was such a nice St. Patrick's Day until the Irish people showed up is my favourite. It's not what you think, it's his penis. It's another really funny one. Marge imagining her life as a baker but it not being very different at all is also very hilarious. Marge's dumb moments are always super humorous to me. The Skinner and Chalmers one is another really funny one too. especially them having to eat the cake before Agnes comes downstairs, Smithers' commitment, Twinkie cake. I can go on and on and on. The chase scene with Homer and Flanders, coming in and out of that front window to get his keys, Homer in the elevator, kindly deeds done for free, the montage. Oh god, I could just go on and on and on. The humour is just so damn good in this one. On the humour side of things, this episode gets a massive 10 out of 10. I don't have a negative thing to say about it, apart from maybe that Hulk/Thing joke was a little but even saying that, I like how they paralleled the two characters with the orange of Northern Ireland and the green of the Republic of Ireland. Part of the reason why the humour works so well for Homer and Ned is because they work in this really great buddy cop dynamic. I actually think this is the best Flanders and Homer episode. So let's look at their characters. The dynamic between Homer and Flanders in this episode really gives a new perspective on their relationship. One of my favourite moments is them bonding in the car waiting for Fat Tony. The AC/DC scene really helps bring these two together. They may have their differences, but they also have their similarities at the same time. And they bond really well. I think despite all of Homer's hatred for Flanders, we really see that here that they make great friends. I think Flanders having to be the one to chase Homer for bell jumping too was a great plot turn, and shows that even after everything Homer did to Flanders, he cares enough to taking him in without him getting hurt. And the scene near the end when Ned reflects on all the good times was really touching. I especially love the scene where Flanders rips up the wanted photo of Bart. Honestly, these two are really cast in a great light, and I think the episode does wonders for their established relationship arc. Next we have Marge. I don't think anything here is too profound with her character, but it's funny seeing her in this super sexual scenario. Marge has always been a tad traditional, so it's amusing to see her eventually cave and embrace making these sexy cakes. It's weird that she never ends up rejecting it explicitly. It's more implied with that cake at the end of the episode, and I think this was a perfect way to end the story. Patrick is a cool new character and a funny one too, and Lucky Jim serves his purposes but is nothing special, but hey, he didn't need to be. Seeing all the various criminals around Springfield, especially the established one, was really great for universe consistency. So overall, this episode gets another massive thumbs up for the characters. The characters are well presented in this episode. Anyway, let's move on to the score. I have praised this episode a lot, and honestly I was surprised how good it was. I've always thought it was good, but looking at this with a real critical eye, it is clear that this episode goes beyond my normal standards for The Simpsons. It's amazing in fact, flawless, perfect, use whatever word you want. You have a really solid plot with all of the right twists and turns, a funny B plot that doesn't feel disconnected from the main A plot, a hilarious abundance of humour that is consistently funny throughout the episode, and a great buddy cop relationship between Ned and Homer. This episode is hard to fault, and maybe this is part of my low expectations, but overall, I give Sex Pies and Idiot Scrapes a solid 10 out of 10. My first 10, but honestly, I can't think of a single thing to fault it on. Anyway, let's move on to the wheel. So, let's spin. So, the next episode we will be reviewing is Marge in Chains. Hey, it's gonna be an interesting one.